Hi everyone.
G'day.
And welcome to Parkside Live. Yes, if you haven't, grab yourself a cuppa. It's cold where we are. And
Bit chilly.
Yeah. But we're so thankful that you have joined us, wherever you're joining us from, whether you're watching it live or later. We really appreciate you coming along for the ride, I guess. And we hope that our conversation around being confronted by chaos might just encourage you as you go where you're headed on this faith journey with Jesus.
Yeah. Well, all I can remember is a hand shaking me saying, "You've got to go." And I kind of awoke and the difference between opening my eyes and having my eyes closed was not too great. We were in quite a dark tent and someone was standing over me, shaking me with a piece of paper in their hand saying, "You've got to get this to the headquarters." And so we were part of an organisation that was doing a training activity. But I remember standing up, I had some equipment that I needed to take, and so I slung that over my shoulders. And I can remember as I was going down the road that was lit vaguely by overhead lighting, that I was trying to do it up, but I just couldn't find the buckle. And I was watching a light at the end of the road, but I was kind of weaving down the road. I didn't know what was in my hand. I wasn't quite sure what had preceded. I'd just been woken from this deep sleep and I was quite disoriented. Matter of fact, I was confronted by a state of complete mental chaos. And eventually I found my way to where I needed to go, gave my important message to whoever, but in that moment it was completely disorienting and overwhelming. And we are going to explore being confronted by chaos this evening. And as you're watching, perhaps a story comes to mind of your own experience of chaos where you felt like everything is just completely disordered, where you feel like, there's just nothing going on. I don't know. Do you have a story of personal chaos?
Personal chaos. I think really anything to do with parenting. I mean, it's so amazing, but I think there a lot of the times it's chaos, especially when you've got young kids. Like we had 4 under 4 because we had twins, with 2 newborns at the same time as, a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old.
Good evening. Thanks for the message.
I think that was a bit chaotic. You're getting used to some things,
crazy.
And then, you've got newborns, 2 of them waking up, in the middle of the night, and even just if you've been roused out of a sleep, if you've managed to get to sleep. I mean, like you're kind of, when you wake up, you've just got to get things done, but it can feel chaotic, or you've just got lots of people sleeping at different times, people, all of that stuff. I think when we want our lives to be ordered and things to go to plan in parenting, especially with young kids, it's not how it goes, because people,
very true,
little kids have different needs at different times,
right.
And emotions can be all over the place, and we might have this plan, but we need to shift because people need something different at the time. So I think that's it took a while to get into a groove, and even now everyone's a bit older, but we can have our moments because we've got lack of sleep or some other things going on for me. And it can feel chaotic.
You were incredible though. I remember we tried to manage it. And so we said, okay, I'll do before 12, you'll do after. And I can remember more than once you got up before 12 and I was like, go back to bed, like you need the rest. But it was crazy. And then if you look around at the world that we live in, any personal experience of chaos that we might have is added to by what is happening in the world. If you look at the situation right now, the conflict between Israel and initially Palestine, and just the utter chaos, the complete lack of disorder that Israel's attacks have brought, and including the death toll. And then you see images of missiles being launched from nation to nation, and you think order has just broken down. For those of us who are a bit more financially motivated, you may be looking at the stock market this year and thinking, what is happening? We've had peaks and troughs. It's crazy. And I think as human beings, there are moments where we just feel any structure that we may have been able to apply to our world, any order, we may feel it is breaking down.
Yeah.
And I think we all respond to that differently.
Yeah.
You know, I know when I feel like things get a bit chaotic, I just tend to get quite focused. Probably, unfortunately, for those around me, sometimes even a little abrupt, and I just go, I'm making a decision in this moment. This is the one thing that matters. Boom, boom. Everything else gets bumped. I don't know. How do you feel you respond?
I don't know. I think if things seem too chaotic or overwhelming, I can want to just leave it all.
Just go.
And just go, like disappear somewhere. And sometimes that's a good thing because I can then refocus and prioritize different things. But sometimes it doesn't help the chaos.
Yeah. And for those of you who are tuning in, it's a helpful exercise to think, how do I respond when my world feels chaotic? And that might be your world internally, just your immediate world, or you might be looking at the world and thinking similarly to what we're doing. How do we respond when we are confronted with chaos? And as we so often do, we're going to draw some inspiration from the scriptures tonight. And we're going to be just reading from the book of Genesis here. And I'm just going to actually read very short tonight. And it just says here, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty, and darkness covered the deep waters, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the surface of the waters. Just a short thought there. And regardless of what you believe, you may have heard those famous words, in the beginning. But this is a story that's told about how the world began. And scholars and academics will say that this was actually written down in around about the 6th century when the nation of Israel had been actually conquered, taken from their land. Their city that they built was destroyed. The place of worship that they had established was destroyed. They were taken away. Now, we're not going to make any connections between that event and what's happening now. But I just want you to imagine for a moment that you are someone whose home has been invaded by armed forces. And you've seen the structures of your day, the government of your day being taken away by another nation. You've seen people who don't speak your language suddenly taking control of where you are. You've seen the people that you look to for wisdom removed. And then you're taken from the place where you grew up, from the place where you hope to build a future, and you're taken to a foreign country who practice different ways of living, different diets. You know, the food that you may have been fed but in your family, it's not available anymore. The traditions and the communal gatherings that you once had, the rhythms in your life are completely gone. And you're now in a place where, and you've got to learn a new language if you want to be able to buy food. No one's offering you a language class. You've just got to find your way through. And yet in those moments, that's when we think that these words were actually written down. That when they were confronted by the chaos of conquest and relocation, forced relocation, that this group of people wrote these words. And it's interesting to me, there's a version of the Bible that says that when creation begins, that the earth was in complete chaos. You know, the words I just read there were formless and empty. And I think when we find ourselves in the middle of chaos, I don't know if you ever felt like this is just out of shape, out of control. And when you're feeling overwhelmed, it's hard to find any satisfaction in that. It does feel quite empty. And when you look at the chaos that is happening, it is hard to find anything that is life-giving in that moment. And so we're exploring this story that these group of people who are plunged into chaos are telling. Now, I want to just focus in on a particular word here. Darkness covered the deep. And there's a few different things. I think when you read this earlier, your particular version of the Bible was saying,
abyss.
Yeah, the watery abyss. And it's interesting, our word that we use for chaos actually comes from the Greek word abyss.
There you go.
Abyss. Now, but what we're reading here is the story of these people. And I want to just step aside into culture for a moment. Because you can, when you're confronted with chaos, you can be a fighter, you can just want to leave, whatever. In the conquerors, the Babylonian people were the conquerors. In the conquerors' worldview, they had a different system of worship. And their system of worship included two gods who got together and created a whole generation of gods, right? Now, those two gods that got together, one was Tiamat, and she was represented as the deep waters. And then the other one was represented as the water of the ground. They got together, produced, and then there was just like chaos, because the second generation wiped out this god, and then this god wiped out the second generation, and then someone else stepped in, a person called Marduk. Now, we're not trying to give you an anthropological study of deities, but it's interesting that there was a deity at that time that was known as deep and dark. And in this story here, we see that there's a deep darkness that is preventing life from taking place. A deep darkness that is actually sustaining the chaos, keeping things from taking form and keeping things from producing life. And if you've ever been in a chaotic situation, particularly for an extended period, it can feel like there is a deep darkness at work against you. And sometimes that is, you can feel like that's a financial thing. We go through moments in our life where we think, I'm working hard, but I just don't seem to be able to get ahead. Sometimes it's more directly spiritual. I really respect your sense on things that are unseen. I mean, you've had senses of just darkness previously. Yeah. And sometimes it might just be relational darkness. You're in a relationship with someone and you just feel like this is just not helping. It's not leading me anywhere. And so this story is actually addressing that sense of darkness. And yet what we see here is that in the without form, the emptiness, and in the darkness, that the God of this conquered people, they then say, well, this God steps into that darkness. This God moves into the chaos. And so when confronted with darkness, well, the first thing that this God does is say,
let there be light.
Let there be light. Brings light to darkness. And then, there's deep waters. And then God says, if you read on through Genesis chapter 1, God says to the deep waters, what?
That produce life. Like, he speaks to the water team with life.
He brings life to the waters, and he brings light, and then he says, let's separate the waters. And so there's an air gap created between the waters above and waters below. Some might call that an atmosphere, I'm not sure. But then he separates the waters, and then he again separates the water with land and brings that in. And then what starts to happen is exactly what you said. He starts to fill the waters. He starts to fill the skies. He starts to fill the land. Now, when we look at this, some people may look at this and say, oh, this is a description. This is a story that is told about where we come from. And if we look around in the world, it's easy to believe, actually, the other story, the story that says we emerged out of conflict and chaos and destruction. But then when we look at this story, this says, no, there is another way.
Yeah.
There is a way to bring life from darkness. There is a way to bring shape from things that are formless. There is a way to bring new life and fullness from what is empty.
Yeah.
And in the middle of all this, then humanity is introduced not into conflict and turmoil, but into a world that has been created good and good and good, and humanity is seen as very good.
Yeah.
And if you're in the middle of chaos right now, I want you to know that there is another way to see the world, and that there is a God who steps into chaos, a God who moves into confusion, and who sees you as good. Who sees you as good. And when we read through this creation story, we see the light into the darkness. It reminds me actually of something that was written much later when the writer of John's Gospel said, in the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. In him was life, and that light gave life to the world. In him, everything was created, and nothing that has been made was made without him. And it goes on to say that light shines in the darkness, and the darkness cannot overcome it. Now, they are some powerful words to draw comfort that there is a light shining in the darkness, and in the middle of your chaos and confusion, I want you to know that there is a light shining on you right now. You may feel surrounded and enveloped by this darkness, but there is a light shining on you. And I know that, not just because these words have been written, but because I've experienced that myself. That in the darkness of my life, that the light of Jesus shone in and gave me a way forward. And I can remember a moment that I was reflecting on my life and thinking, man, I've done some pretty silly things, and I'm finding my life pretty dissatisfying. And yet, as I opened the scriptures, there was this line that said, because of the God's great love, we are not consumed. And when Jesus steps into the chaos of this world, he doesn't come as a conqueror, but he comes with the power of love. He doesn't come to destroy, but he comes as the source and sustainer of life. And we want you to know that as you're watching this, in the middle of whatever chaos you're confronted by now, that there is another way to move forward. And we want to invite you to experience a life that only Jesus can give. And we're just going to share a simple prayer, and that prayer is simply to say, Jesus, I want this life. I give you my life. And if you're willing to take that step of faith right now, then pray with us. Jesus, I give you my life. Give me your life. Jesus, I give you my life. Give me your life. And if you took that step as you're watching this, I want you to know that where there is darkness, that a light beyond anything you've ever experienced before is beginning to shine. That where there is emptiness, that there is actually a fullness, and somehow the deepest part of you is being connected with the most incredible part of the creator of the universe. We'd love to support you on any next step that you take. We invite you, leave us a comment, drop us a DM on our socials. Thanks for tuning in. God bless you.
Bye.